Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, fellow history enthusiasts. We have a special episode for you today, but before we get to that, let it be known that today's episode is brought to you and sponsored by Professor Stabler, History Class 303. Remember, kids, don't use damn to be verbs. All right, let's get into this. To this day, many Americans are still divided on what exactly justified the slave system that would lead to the bloodiest American war. Fuck. To this day, Americans are still divided on what exactly justified the slave system that would lead to the bloodiest war in American history. What systems dictate these pro- and anti-slave ideologies to the point where millions of Americans felt it was worth killing their fellow countrymen? Some historians, like Gerald Gunderson, believe that economics dictate these ideologies that would lead to that war. Others, like Roger Thompson, claim that modernization and the politics of the time shaped and propagated the ideals that led to this war. But both of these arguments undermine the role of religious faith. Religion serves as the moral guidance for many, if not all, civilizations into the contemporary world. Though what role did religion have in the era of the American Civil War? Religion served as the main driving force behind the ideologies and justifications of the American institution of slavery, shaping public perception and faith into creating a form of antebellum Christianity. As I said earlier, the Civil War is one of the most bloodiest and brutal wars in American history. The justification of why or what convinced these Americans to enact this war is still debated, but whether for states' rights, union restoration, emancipation, or Southern cultural conservation, religious faith is the foundation and key driving force behind the American public's ideologies and political debates at the time. By analyzing the proponents of slavery debates, the results of slave revolts, and the impact of domestic terrorism both before and during the Civil War, I seek to show that faith shaped the American public ideologies during the Civil War. Faith and religion have a profound impact on the ideologies of a society's culture and beliefs, especially in America. This is shown within the context of the political and social debates on the issue of slavery in America, and this is how. Before the outbreak of the Civil War, the issues of slavery was a matter of great concern for the American public. Both abolitionists and pro-slavery advocates engaged in intense debates regarding the legitimacy of slavery in the states. These debates often utilized religious arguments to either validate or invalidate the institution of slavery in America. Advocates in favor of slavery would consistently quote scripture or use religious scripture to justify slavery in the South. Some individuals like John Brown exploited loopholes in the natural law within the Bible.
The natural law then does not prohibit a man from bartering his own liberty and services to save his life, to provide for his sustenance, to secure other enjoyments in which he prefers that freedom and that right to his own labor, which he gives in exchange for life and protection.
Other pro-slavery advocates like James Thornwell, a South Carolinian pastor and theologian, used biblical scripture to justify the practice of slavery in support of arguments like England's.
The providence of God marks out for the slave the precise services and the lawful commands of the master, which it is divine will that he should render. The painful necessities of his case are often as stringent upon the free laborer, and determine, with as stern a mandate, what contracts he shall make. Neither can he said to be select his employments. God allots each of his position, places one immediately under command, and leaves the other not infrequently a petitioner for a master.
Thornwell and England's argument set the theme of the pro-slavery argument, the theme being the exploitation of loopholes within the Bible or cherry-picking certain scriptures to justify slavery. Their action was also supported by the church as many Southern congregations began to adjust their faith to accommodate slavery, and the worst part is that many of these churches were completely aware of it.
It cannot be denied that the church has, from time to time, accommodated her disciplinary regulations to the necessities of her ministry and membership in the slaveholding states. Originally, slaveholding was not tolerated at all.
On the other side of the argument, some abolitionists countered with scripture of their own. Others rejected the idea of fighting fire with fire in this debate as futile and misleading. One such abolitionist was Frederick Douglass, who sought to undermine the religious justifications for slavery. According to Douglass, pro-slavery advocates were not simply quoting scripture, but rather distorting and exploiting it to uphold the institution of slavery and promote a twisted form of Christianity that served the interest of the Southern slaveholders.
Why has slavery made part of the religion of the land? Yes, that pulpit there stands up as the great defender of this cursed institution, as it is called. Instead of preaching the gospel against this tyranny, rebuke, and wrong, the ministers of religion have sought by all and every means to throw in the background whatever in the Bible can be construed into opposition to slavery, and to bring forward that which they could torture into its support. This I conceive to be the darkest feature of slavery, and the most difficult to attack, because it is identified with religion, and exposes those who denounce it to the charge of infidelity.
Douglas, like many abolitionists, would come to find that a formal debate on the topic of slavery would be ultimately futile. Arguing faith with faith leads to stagnation in the debate, and as tension rises, the stagnant debate would leave Americans as evenly split on the matter since its beginning.
Critical conclusion to these debates because, as mentioned earlier, people like John England and James Thornwell were not singular special takes on the debate, but represented the ideology of the pro-slavery debate as a whole, using the same faith that shaped the opinion of the masses to defend the institution of slavery.
In essence, both advocates for and against slavery realized that a peaceful resolution to the matter was unlikely to be reached through formal debate. As a result, physical conflict became an inevitable outcome. This tension erupted into violence, and during the infamous Bloody Kansas event, the conflict was fueled by a race between pro- and anti-slavery factions to establish a majority presence in Congress through the creation of either pro- or anti-slavery states. So we have seen how faith collectively shapes the ideals of the American public. But what about the individual?
The influence of faith on American ideologies has been a subject of great interest over the years. However, it is worth noting that faith has also been known to inspire individuals to incite significant acts of violence within the American public. A few instances of such violence include John Brown's raid of Harper's Ferry and Nat Turner's slave revolt. These events come to serve as a testament to the power of faith in shaping human behavior and actions. The spirit that spoke to the prophets in former days, and I was greatly astonished, and for 2 years prayed continually, whenever my duty would permit, and then again I had the same revelation, which fully confirmed me in the impression that I was ordained for some great purpose in the hands of the Almighty. Here before God, in the presence of these witnesses, I consecrate my life to the destruction of slavery.
Both were inspired by a divine calling, fueling their faith to the point that it became so estranged from the mainstream antebellum Christianity that it was even considered a separate faith. Though both unsuccessful, the revolt instigated by Nat Turner and the raid conducted by John Brown would shake pro-slavery advocates to the core. The result of Nat Turner's revolt was, as historian John Cromwell put it, the brutality on the onslaught was a reflex of slavery. The object lesson which he gave brought the question home to every fireside until public conscience. Once callous, became quickened, and slavery was doomed.
These agents of religion show faith's influential potential on the individual. Nat Turner's faith led him to resist his enslavers and free his people spiritually and literally. John Brown's faith led him to dedicate his life to the destruction of slavery within America. Even though many Americans at the time saw them as religious fanatics, their actions resonated in the hearts and minds of the public, whether for better or for worse. If John Brown did not end the war that ended slavery, he did at least begin the war that ended slavery.
So you're telling me I could get my point across more effectively through violence than coercion?
What? No! This is not what Frederick Douglass means. In this case, John Brown and Nate Turner, their use of violence was due to circumstance. Turner was a slave fighting for freedom, while Brown was one of the numerous Americans involved in the Bleeding Kansas event.
Mm-hmm.
The catalyst event that would lead to secession and then the Civil War. Thus, Douglass is saying that Brown's actions was the catalyst that would lead to the Civil War.
So, violence is the answer?
No! How'd you even deduce that?
With my brain.
Oh my god.
So, what does this mean? This means that religion within the Civil War stands as the foundation on which the political debates, or more specifically their arguments, are founded upon. We see that within individuals like John Brown and Nat Turner, it is shown that faith is a powerful motivator for acts of liberation and desolation. It means that congregations across the South transformed into political propaganda machines, lobbying so-called newfound righteous justification of the bloody institution of slavery.
It means that religion served as the main driving force behind the ideologies and justification of the American institution of slavery. I'm the Tired Historian. That is this episode. Thank you for joining me.